All right, we are live. All right, I got Burns273 with me. I'm Hunter Sinclair. Welcome to the DFSArmy Week 12 Off Chalk Pod, and we are going to break it down. We're going to try to power through this. I think Burns, you said you can only be with us for about an hour tonight, so
Yeah,
I'm going to try to keep us time boxed on each one of these games. You guys covered it real well, I think, on the Wolfpack, so we don't really have to rehash a lot of that. So we'll keep it to some really kind of more specific off chalk, unique plays. One thing I wanted to try to do a little bit differently this week, considering kind of like that you've already been on another pod and talked about all this stuff, is maybe we, instead of like individual player off chalk type of plays, where we can talk about some of those. But I want to play off of something that Statsational was talking about, which is lineup construction, and I'd like to talk more about um, off chalk player combinations. So, a couple of the ones that came to mind out of the Wolfpack, actually, one that I was kind of a little mad that you said because I was going to talk to you about it, and then I was like, oh man, he's already on it. So was the Latavius Kamara stack situation there. And I was like, oh man, I think this is the week. And then you said it about like an hour and a half or so into that pod. I'm like, okay, so it's not secret anymore. So, but it's good to at least hear some validation that I'm not the only one that thinks that might be a pretty interesting place. So
this week, if any, it's probably the best week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, well, we'll get to it, I guess, with the games, but yeah, I think with Carolina, the style of team that they are and how susceptible they have been, and I kind of expect Michael Thomas to get shut down a little bit. Historically, he's been covered pretty well by Carolina, and so I mean, Michael Thomas can go off any week, but
yeah,
I think they may have to lean on the run a bit more in this game, and I can see that playing out. So interesting take. I like it for a Millie kind of lineup construction or a big tournament kind of construction, because it's definitely going to be something a bit unique and gets you off some of the other kinds of higher end running back or mid range running back options that combinations. So for those who are just joining us, we're gonna change it up a little bit. I just talked to Burns about it, but we're going to cover the game slate, but we're going to kind of get more specific around player combinations that we think are going to be more unique rather than individual plays. So keep it a little bit different than the Wolfpack. If you guys want to know individual players, listen to the Wolfpack. It was great. They covered all the games in very good detail, and I don't know that we could really add a whole lot of new takes on individual players on this pod, unless there's a few like news and notes that we'll talk about that might have changed since that came out. So all right, cool, let's get started. I'm going to pull up my notes here, and we'll start with Denver versus Buffalo. So yeah, so I kind of like, this is an interesting one just because these are two pretty good pass defense teams, and both of them are sort of susceptible to the run, at least more so than they are to the pass. So low total here, but I think both defenses are in play in this game. What's your thoughts here on the kind of Buffalo side of things here? I mean, is this another John Brown stack kind of situation, or are you kind of like thinking that Chris Harris is going to kind of shut that down, and we're going to, like, it's not something you really want to get too involved in?
For those of you that do not know, Denver's Chris Harris, he is a shutdown corner. He usually goes and he is paired up with the top wide receiver for the but those of you that do, great.
And specifically in the slot, really.
Especially, yeah,
specifically in the slot too. John Brown does play out of the slot, so
Yeah, and Chris Harris is uh, he's as good as it gets. I'm not on John Brown this week. I was last week. It was a really good week for
Mhm.
John Brown last week, to be on him in that game. But this week I'm not on that side. And if anything in this game, it would be more the running back situation that could lend itself to be the most favorable in this game. But I also like both of these defenses too. I
So you
think
think
they're
this
both.
is a good game to maybe stack up with like Buffalo Singletary kind of situation, maybe, or a even like a Fant Denver potential?
Yeah, I actually really like the latter one that you just mentioned.
Hmm.
Fant is a really good. He's starting to come around as a rookie, and he's really producing for Denver right now. Um, Now the Broncos defense is not going to be. It's not going to be a low owned defense this week. They're actually going to be probably relatively owned, but Fant is what makes that stack really a little bit lower owned. I don't think Fant will be as as high owned as some of the other tight ends on the slate, and so that lends yourself to a very nice little stack there. You're not going to get the ownership on Fant, but you will get it on the Broncos. But
What do you think about Philip Lindsay? Also in that in that Broncos stack kind of situation, he's getting a bit more of the volume over Freeman now, and at 5,200, he's definitely seems playable in this situation here. Buffalo hasn't shown that they've been that great of a defense against the running back either. So if they're susceptible, it seems like that's one way to attack. They're both basically the same defense, in my opinion. They both are pretty elite shutdowns against the pass, and more susceptible, especially to pass catching running backs.
absolutely.
Like, yeah.
I actually do like Lindsey more than I like Freeman in this situation. And actually, to tell you the truth, DraftKings Sportsbook backs that up. Lindsey's a
Mhm.
plus 100 favorite to score a touchdown in the game, whereas in this game, Freeman is actually only at plus 190. Um, so you're actually getting value on Lindsey in this game versus that of Freeman.
So I mean, so these guys are all just when we talk about guys in this range, there you have a few choices down here, and I'll mention a few of them real quick, just so you can kind of like consider possible like options around that same price range. But really, the people that are going to be playing running backs in this range are going to be playing Kareem Hunt. Probably is going to get a lot more ownership than most of these guys in this range, but the other guys would be James White, Lindsay himself, and then potentially maybe some David Montgomery or Singletary or even Miles Sanders. Although the Ajayi thing, I'm not sure how that's going to affect that. So from an ownership perspective, but we should see Miles Sanders still be the lead or at least the starter there. And if they work Ajayi in, he'll come in and take away some of those touches. So but that's basically that 5,000 to 5,600 range. I think those are the guys that are going to be kind of in the mix. I mean, you could go down to like 4,800 at Tariq Cohen, and I think he's probably comparable in those same kind of role of the pass catching kind of running back situation. Lindsey's really kind of more of a grinder, goal line kind of guy. He does catch passes, but they've been using Freeman sort of in that change of pace role more than Lindsey. I liked it better when they used him as the change of pace kind of guy because he's a really good receiving running back, and he's super dangerous if you can get him into space. So anyhow, I think that those are good plays. I think they're good combinations. I don't think they're going to be heavily owned situations, those combinations of defense with those two running backs, just because they're lower priced kind of running back situations. But I like those as kind of like secondary stacks with some of these other teams that we're going to be talking about. Any thought on Tim Patrick for Denver there? The only
Yeah, we
reason I
talked about him
mention
on
him
Look Back.
is the Yeah, I actually didn't get to that game because I was trying to finish that up while I was at the grocery store getting materials for my beef jerky I'm going to be cooking this weekend. But I assume that you guys probably did cover them. So, with Tre'Davious White probably going to be covering it, Sutton, Patrick might be a potential option there. They're using him quite a bit in the red zone. So, I think he's a good pay down option to kind of mix into a few of those other guys. So we don't have to kill it if you guys already talked about it on the Wolf Pack. So
yeah, we talked about it a little bit. And North is on them, and I
Mhm.
like that, as is Statsational. So they piqued my interest in them. I hadn't actually gotten much to that game yet in
Okay.
terms of like the lower punt value players, but as I get into the week tomorrow further on these punt value players, but yeah, he, after listening to both stats and North on the Wolfpack about him, I am going to be looking at him more intently and more towards actually utilizing him is in the WR3 position this week at DraftKings.
Yeah, he's basically going to get you, basement like lowest salary possible for a wide receiver. I mean, he's basically the only guy that's. I mean, there's a few guys down there like Scotty Miller. We'll talk about him, but Tim Patrick and there's a couple other guys down there in that low $3,000 range that you could potentially mix in there. You don't really want to have a whole lot of ownership of really any of these guys, but with this week, we got to get that value, that one guy down there that gets you, hopefully gets you, 10 to 15 points to get some of these other guys. If you want to play a Christian McCaffrey or really any of these stacks of the Tampa Bay Atlanta game, you got to have a low punt value type player. For me, like if we're just talking about that range, it's going to be probably the guys that I'm looking at most heavily is going to be N'Keal Harry for New England, and Tim Patrick and what's his name for Tampa Bay, or what's
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Scotty Miller. So 33,000 for Tim Patrick, 3,100 for Scotty Miller, and 3,300 for N'Keal Harry. Yep. You could potentially talk about a couple of these other guys down here, but like Damian Willis or like somebody like that on Cincinnati has some potential. Like they're pretty sketchy plays in my opinion. Just because we don't really know what to expect out of them. Even Holton, right? He's gonna start because Juju's out, but he's the third guy, and I'd rather go with like a N'Keal Harry if I'm gonna do something like that. At least he's going to probably. Well, we'll have to see how Dorsett's status comes. Yeah. If Dorsett's out, I like that play a lot more than if he's playing. But, and I think that, I was listening to a couple of the other pods because I wanted to see kind of like how much people were talking about guys like Scotty Miller and stuff like that. And they've been briefly mentioned, and even N'Keal Harry and stuff like that. Like they're briefly mentioned, but nobody's really like heavily, talking up some of these like low end plays. So I don't know how heavily owned they're going to be from industry people, but they're not. I think a lot of people are finding them just because they're the third man on some of these teams that are good teams. So, all right, cool. Let's keep going. Let's do Giants at Chicago. So we got a couple interesting news and notes here. Sterling Shepard should be back, and Ellison and Ingram are not expected to play. So guy out of whatever his name is, Simonson or Smith or whatever, they two other guys that they have are. But it does create some interesting options here, and I'm with you, Burns, on what I heard you say on the Wolfpack here. That for me, I think you could probably consider a few of these pass catchers here, but really, it's I think they've got to get Barkley going, and this is feels like the good spot for Barkley, and really, Giants defense hasn't played that well, but I mean, we're talking about Trubisky here. It's I don't think that's a bad, if you're going to try to do some correlation plays here, like Giants D with they put up some big numbers against shitty teams, so they can do it. And there's nothing too scary to be afraid of here. Now, there are some plays I like on Chicago, and I don't mind stacking it the other way as well, but for some just kind of contrarian style, if you're going to go do a couple lineups one way and then do a couple the other way. But, I usually don't like too many of my lineups battling each other, but occasionally I'll do one or two that like that. But just so I'm kind of covering my bases. But I always feel like I'm playing too many angles when I do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I do like the running back side of the things more this game. Barkley is in as good of a spot in this game as he has had in a while this year. Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested in what this game has to offer for him. Like we talked earlier, I like Cohen in this game a lot.
Barkley. Who we got in here in this? All right.
Yeah. So Barkley is Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants, one of the top running backs in the NFL.
I think that's a joke. I hope that's a joke.
But yeah, I also like on the other side of the ball. I also like Tariq Cohen. He is one of the best outside of maybe Christian McCaffrey, one of the better pass catching backs in the NFL. Just pure pass catcher out of the backfield. He just is such a beast at what he does. And
yeah, I mean, I wish they'd throw it to him a bit further than 1 yard or behind the yard, the line of scrimmage a bit more. I mean, shoot, if you look at his, a few of his games where he's, he gets a crap ton of targets, but let's see. I mean, we can go back to a few of these past games here, but shoot, I was just looking at week 7. That was quite a while ago, but week 7, shoot, he gets 12 targets, 9 catches for 17 yards. That's not, that's not great, but I mean, PPR wise, awesome. Last week, he gets five catches on 6 targets for 35 and a touchdown. I mean, if he gets the touchdown, he's going to smash because he's getting enough volume to do well. So I really like, I like the call. I like all of these pass catcher type guys that are going to get, over 6 catches a game, as a running back with the potential to score, if they're, he's also getting running back or actual carries as well. And, there's some opportunity there. And we've seen in the past where they like to use Cohen kind of down this kind of late season stretch as well, a bit more. So maybe we'll see that again this year. So I don't mind taking, definitely a few shots with him, mixing him into that kind of 5,000 running back kind of rotation that we're going to have.
Well, he's also in the past had some connection with Trubisky. So, and they've actually paired on the winning Millie Maker lineup in 2018. So it's there's a lot of talk about Trubisky this week. Is he good enough to be
is he good? No.
Quarterback?
No, he's not good. but is he good enough to start maybe this week against the Giants? Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely make a case to play him. I mean, if you're going to play Trubisky, then you're going to mix him in. I mean, you got to get the guys over there that that his pass catches are good. They're all kind of speedy kind of guys. Even like Miller is even getting a good amount of volume underneath and stuff like that. So I think they're all potentially in play. So
Yeah.
that as an option on the Wolfpack. So I don't know that there's any really kind of interesting, unique combinations here that that are going to be super like unique or off chalk kind of thing. I think that playing Barkley. I think if you wanted to play Barkley and mix in the Giants defense, I think that might be a bit unique. I think people will be playing Barkley, but I don't know how many people are going to be doing that defense correlated stack there. I think you could make a case with both tight ends being out that they're going to, in addition to Barkley getting some of that carrying work, that that Sterling Shepard is a viable play here. I mean, he's not coming back from an injury. He's coming back from a concussion. So I think a lot of times people think guys coming back from being out, they're more hesitant to play those guys. But when they come back from a concussion, it's not the same type of thing, right? They're going to come back into their volume role. Now, according, when he left, Golden Tate wasn't around doing his thing. And I guess, well, he'd been back and forth, right? This is his second concussion of the year. But there's not quite the volume to go around. Slayton hadn't kind of blown up at that time. So there's a bit more options now, I think. But Ingram used to take a ton of that away, and I think that just shifts to one of these other guys, right? And I think you're going to probably split it up, but I don't mind mixing those guys in. Chicago really hasn't been stellar overall, defensively. Like there's no one like shutdown type of situation here that you have to be too afraid of. So I don't mind playing in this, Saquon Barkley, or according to our listeners, we're playing Charles Barkley in this game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not. I mean, he probably could have been a good tight end in his day. Who knows?
Yeah, right. All right, cool. Let's move on. So Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati. So a couple of the news and notes here. Obviously, Juju's going to be out. Connor's out. We've got their pro center is going to be out. This is not looking like a very healthy Pittsburgh team. They've got Rudolph at quarterback, does not look great. They have actually seemed to like that. His kind of like connection with James Washington sort of seemed to be picking up a bit of steam. So I've been looking at that last week as a play. Didn't really work out, but it does look like Deontay will play. So at least they'll have two somewhat interesting wide receivers, and Holton will kind of fill that out. And then Banks, McDonald, and Jalen Samuels is going to be probably the predominant running back, although Benny Snells is going to also be probably in play as well. So I figure that they'll probably split that running back duties more or less evenly, with Jalen getting all of the pass catching work. So I think he's still in play. He's really expensive though, and I don't know that I want to pay up for a guy like that I can maybe get a guy in the $5,000 range that's getting close to the same amount of volume from that kind of role. If he was the only guy, then I don't mind paying up into that range, but he's pretty pricey.
Yeah, that's way too pricey for me for a running back that's not going to get the volume that he needs, even pass catching volume as well. This game's starting to shape itself out to be a very low scoring game, with Pouncey out in the center position for Pittsburgh. He's viewed as their go-to captain with all their injuries, as well as suspensions that have been incurred during the Cleveland game. So him being out, that's a big blow to that offense. And how does that affect the time that Mason Rudolph has to throw the ball? Um, it's going to have a significant impact on him. So
Hmm.
that's why I'm fading this whole Pittsburgh pass catching. I'm fading James Washington. The only spot that I do see some interest for me would be with McDonald, because if anything, that Cincinnati is a bad football team, don't get me wrong, but they could pressure Mason Rudolph in this game, and if they do, he's going to have to dump the ball off short to Vance McDonald, and
Or Jalen Samuels.
or Samuels, but
Yeah.
Samuels is so much more pricey.
Yeah, no, it's super expensive. I really want to play him just because this is Cincinnati, right? And that's the cheat
Yeah,
code for Cincinnati. But I mean, Jesus, like you're gonna take Samuels with, I mean, he's sort of like basically a slot receiver is what he is.
hmm
But I mean, even if we could project him to get 12 targets, let's say in this game, are you going to take him over, let's say Leonard Fournette, that's going to get that plus 20 carries? He's not going to get 12 targets, but he's going to get 6
yep,
and 20 carries. But I mean, that's your choice, right? Like Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry is going to get 24 carries. Even Le'Veon Bell, like who's cheaper at 6,400, is going to get more volume. So, and
yep,
probably close, not as much, but like close to as much passing volume. Like he gets a lot. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard when you start stacking him up against Zeke. Like
yeah,
$300 more for Zeke. Forget it. Like I don't
yep.
know. I mean, even in this smash spot, they priced him way up too high. Um, so like if you're going to do anything, like maybe you could consider Benny Snell's at 4,500, but it's like, ugh, I don't
Yeah, I'm with
know.
you on
I mean,
that.
I'd have to have something from the coach to tell me that they're going to actually play him a lot. Like he's going to get at least the 2 down roll to consider him, but I don't know. I hadn't seen much from him, so I'm not too thrilled about that. I was early until I like saw the prices on some of these guys. I was like, yes. But yeah, Vance McDonald, I think he's an interesting play. I think if you want to try to get something out of this game, he's probably one of the guys to look at. Um, the Cincinnati side of things, I think you could probably definitely consider. I think Cincinnati's probably the one cheap defense that I'd maybe consider
hmm
at the kind of low end of the spectrum. Um, and uh, there is some news on Tyler Boyd. He's been very vocal about not getting the volume. So it could be a squeaky wheel kind of deal here.
Yeah. My only concern with
Pittsburgh.
that is Finley get him the ball consistently against a tough
Yeah,
Pittsburgh secondary?
yeah. Well, and so the Pittsburgh defense, I think, and I haven't really done a breakdown of this, but I think that they're more predominantly good against the outside receivers. Where I think it's going to be, what's his name? Uh,
Erickson?
no, 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 no. The cornerbacks for Pittsburgh, it's Hayden and Burns, Artie Burns, maybe.
Oh, okay, yep.
Um, I think are their outside cornerbacks, if I'm not mistaken, and then the Fitzpatrick, who their safety
Minka,
that they got from
yeah.
Miami. Yeah.
He's been really good
So I
since he
mean,
came
like
over.
they're so their deep coverage and their coverage on the outside is pretty good there. So I think they could be more susceptible underneath if you were going to target somebody against them. Boyd might be the guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a stretch to play really a whole lot from this game. It seems like just a kind of just a crappy game in general. But there's a lot of like super cheap dudes here, right? Like you got Erickson, you got I guess Auden Tate is a questionable to play here with a concussion from last week. I don't think he's been cleared yet. So if he doesn't play, and I guess we're expecting that AJ Green's still not going to play.
Right.
Then I think the guy behind him is Morgan, or some, I don't know. There's some other guy. I think it's Morgan that is behind it. But like, we've seen Cincinnati put up good numbers to individual wide receivers, more so when Dalton was throwing to him. But even with Finley, Erickson's had a good game. So like it can definitely happen, and we're not sure who it's going to be any one week. It's not going to be multiple of them, but you can get an individual good receiver here that could be valuable in this situation. So it's just which one it is and whether you want to take a shot. I would keep your ownership to pretty much all of these guys under 2 or 3% if you're doing a bunch of lineups. Just kind of mix them into that low end 3K range. Boyd, I think, is going to be way more expensive though. He is salary. Let me bring him up real quick. I think he was.
Boyd. He's 5,000.
Yeah, so he's still a little pricey, but I mean, the guys around him, they're in the same team, right? Like Deontay and James Washington, Devontae Parker, like there's some other guys in here that are like a little bit better matchups and stuff like that. Curtis Samuel, I like better. I like Devontae Parker better. I like Alshon Jeffrey better if he plays. If he doesn't play, I don't obviously like him.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's definitely some guys in here I like better that stand out a bit more, but I don't mind mixing them into that mix a little bit. Just playing that squeaky wheel kind of thing.
Right. Even down a little bit further, like 200 more less, Randall Cobb could be in a really good spot here. We talked about it on the Wolfpack last night that if because New England schemes out the best player on the opposing team's offense, he's either going to scheme out Zeke or he's going to try to scheme out Cooper.
Did I get you back yet, Burns?
You got me?
Okay. Yeah, you're just cutting out a little bit there. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. What I was saying was, so if Belichick is going to scheme out anybody, he's either going to scheme out Zeke completely or he's going to scheme out Cooper. And when he looks to scheme out Cooper, what's going to happen is those targets are going to get forced to Gallup, Cobb, or Witten. So, however they're going to do this in this game is going to really change a lot of things for your roster construction. So whichever way you believe it to be, you could either go with a stack with Dak, Gallup, Dak and Cobb, Dak and Witten, or if you think that they're not going to scheme out Zeke, then you go with Zeke and not stack that game at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting. I kind of want to wait to see what the ownership projections are going to be tomorrow on what we think that Dak and team will get. I mean, I definitely think it's going to be lower than usual, obviously due to the matchup. But if it's really low, I might switch my strategy to going heavy on that team in my GPPs to just go super overweight on the whole Dallas stack thing. I mean, yes, New England's been great. We don't have a whole lot of a sample size of them playing super high prolific offenses like Dallas. So what we've seen is them play a bunch of shitty teams, and while they have smashed, we don't really know what to expect from a really quality, especially a team that doesn't turn the ball over a significant amount of times, with Dak being a really actually, accurate throwing quarterback, they having an efficient, offensive line, just like a lot of the factors there that I think are going to play into this game that I don't think everybody's really considering, and I think it's going pretty far under the radar in general. Like this just looks like a hard matchup on both sides, and nobody really wants to play guys from either New England or Dallas, and
Yep.
they have like a tremendous amount of potential on both sides.
They
And
sure do.
sorry.
Yeah, the skill set players on both sides of the ball are probably going to be underowned here. As we talked on the Wolfpack last night, I'm liking Sony Michel a lot in this game. So if we can get him in a lower owned spot here, not many people are going to be on him because he's actually burned a lot of people in their season long leagues. So a lot of the casual players in the Millie Maker and your bigger, huge contests aren't going to play him because of that factor. And then a lot of the ownership may not be on him with the less sharper, more heavily played DFS players because
I mean,
have that same adage.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if I'd play too much of Sony personally. Sorry, my I got something stuck in my throat there, but I don't mind James White in this situation. I think he's definitely going to be more owned, but the Sony Michel call is an interesting one. I can't stand him because he just like falls into the end zone and ruins everybody's day kind of thing when he does that. But I'm not sure about this situation. I probably won't go there personally just because I don't want to be that spread out. But
yeah,
especially with Burkhead back, I just it just seems like one of those the three-headed monster. It's hard to really play any of those guys too much. It really is cutting into
right.
James White ownership as well.
For sure, and he's not.
I mean, really, the guy that I want is Edelman here of of any of them, and I don't mind punting with N'Keal Harry, but I don't know. Sony's a tough sell for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be a guy that I'm going to own more than 10% of. So
I don't. How did we get on the Dallas New England game? Because I'm not sure that we're actually there yet, but we switched over from Cincinnati. Before we wrap up on the Cincinnati, I wanted to throw something by you, and I'm not sure if you guys talked about this on the Wolfpack or not, because I can't remember if I listened to the Pittsburgh game. But what do you guys think of Mixon here? The last 2 weeks, he's actually they're finally using him. Like he sucked the whole beginning of the year. He sucked, and they're finally starting to use him. And I don't know if this is just a Finley thing because Finley sucks so bad they have to run the ball more, and they're finally saying, "Okay, Mixon, it's in your hands, and you got to start doing something, or we're gonna freaking bench you or something." But like, yeah, I mean, something lit a fire under him because he's actually been playing a lot better. He got in the end zone last week. The week before that, he got something like 30 touches. But I mean, heck, if he's going to get that kind of volume, and I mean, how much is he? He's like super cheap. Mixin. He's not that cheap. I guess 5,900. So, he's down in that Kareem Hunt range. And he doesn't catch a ton, but he'll get 2 or 3 catches a game. But right now we're projecting him at 20 plus carries a game against a team that is a lot better against defending the pass than they are against the rush. I think so. Do we expect more of the same this week here? I mean, is it a guy that we want to mix into this kind of situation? I mean, what about a Cincinnati defense Joe Mixon combo? Like, it's pretty like scary, but like, it's cheap.
Yeah, that could be a good one. Yeah, he's one that's sneakily starting to produce more and more and more every week. and not many people are even going to be on him this week, even after he blew up last week. So there could be some viability in that play. I think another play in this game that we haven't really touched on is the fact that you could use Tyler Eifert in the tight end spot this week, because Pittsburgh is not really that great against the tight ends. I have them ranked around 28th in the league versus the tight end spot. So at 3,200, I think Tyler Eifert is in play here. Now, am I going to use him in more of my higher dollar entries with single entry GPPs? Probably not, but I probably will be using him in the Millie Maker in and around about 5%.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably about the max I would consider him. But just because, like, I mean, he just doesn't get the volume. They're not using the tight end position, period. I mean, he's getting like at most 4 targets a game kind of thing. And it's really just hard. Even if he gets in the end zone, it's really hard to produce a quality score with that low of a volume.
Right.
With just the routes he's running are super short. They're just, it's not the old Eifert of like 3 years ago that was a volume machine and catching 60-yard passes and whatnot. So, and just without Dalton, I think it's just, I don't know. We saw Dalton warm up last week too. Like, I mean, I don't know what's going on there, but are they thinking about bringing him back in, like in the situation where Finley's just terrible?
It could happen because Finley is not good. And,
well, I mean, you kind of expected that he got benched because they wanted to give this guy a run, and just see kind of like, just let him play out the year. Their season's done or whatever. But, like, if they're going to do that, why are they going to put Dalton back in there? I don't know. So we'll see, I guess, there. But yeah, I think there's a risk.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. I guess we had a note. People keep talking about N'Keal Harry. Yeah. I think they're just because he's the third man up there and there's some injuries to kind of be worried about in New England. So if Philip Dorsett is in the concussion protocol. So he looks like he might play if he clears the protocol. He's been practicing limited fashion, I think, this week, but he still needs to clear in order to play. And who's the other guy that's out? Sorry, my notes here. What are we talking about? Are we switching over to the New England game again?
Well, I think we had looked at the comment there.
Oh, right.
Here.
Yeah, let me just bring it up here. Yeah, Sano's going to miss. Sanu's going to miss. So Dorsett still needs to clear concussion protocol. Sano's not going to be playing for sure. And we've got, well, I guess that's not confirmed yet, but it's looking like he's not going to play, at least according to the pundits. Edelman, and so it should be Edelman, Dorsett, and N'Keal Harry is the 3 guys. If Dorsett plays, if Dorsett doesn't play, then they'll be mixing in Myers in there as well. So that's really the only reason they're going to be. Yes, Sanu, thank you. That's really the only reason people are talking about N'Keal Harry here. Plus, he came in last game, even with those guys playing, and got, I think, 5 targets, 4 or 5 catches in that game. So did fairly well from a volume perspective, coming basically in on that. So, and he's a really talented guy, rookie. So both of those guys, N'Keal Harry and Myers, are super talented. So Myers was the guy during preseason that was just balling. So, and he's been playing a bit here and there. They're only bringing him in for like 20 or 30, I think, snaps a game at the most, kind of as people are getting hurt. But we'll get to that game here in a bit. We're still behind. So let's try to power through this. I know you need to go. What time do you need to get out of here by? Are you running out of time? We're coming up on
We could
10:30 your
go
time.
at how about we go to like 10:45? We can go then.
Okay.
I'll be good then.
All right. Let's power through these so we can get through the rest of the games. Then. All right. Miami. Let's see here. Cleveland and Miami, or Cleveland versus Miami here. So let's just keep it to the interesting combinations since we covered a lot of this stuff on the Wolfpack. The big injury notes here, or not really injury notes, but like news and notes would be Myles Garrett, and I think another one of their linebackers is out in this game. So it's really going to hinder their pass rush a lot for Cleveland. And I guess the kind of the interesting situation with Cleveland is the Kareem Hunt Chubb dynamic there since he's been back. And really what we're seeing is I think Kareem Hunt playing that third down pass catching role and Chubb being kind of the grinder, two down back, which is kind of unfortunate because Chubb's been, for the most part of this year, been playing really well as that stud every down back kind of role. I don't know, it is cutting into his situation a little bit, but I really think that he's still a really viable play here. I think a lot of people are going to be playing Kareem Hunt, even though it's not right now projected very high ownership.
Right.
I think he's really going to be high owned just due to his price point and the fact that I'm hearing a lot of chatter about him. So
I'm gaining more and more traction on Chubb this week because of that. And I was in the beginning of the week on Chubb a lot too. If we didn't have Kareem Hunt in this game, I'd probably be all in on Nick Chubb this week.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. Miami's just like the cheat code here as well, right? So,
and so, I'm not going to be like 75% on Chubb or more, but I may be in and around 35-40% on him. And that's still a significant chunk of my running back capital on one guy. So I got to weigh that out a little bit further into the course of the weekend, how I want to play that. But right now I'm looking at some of my builds where I can get him and Alvin Kamara together in a very good lineup with like some players from Atlanta game. So I'm really liking the builds that I'm seeing with Chubb in it, and it's really getting me more and more on him this week because of that ownership percentage variance there between him and Kareem Hunt, because everybody's thinking that Hunt is going to be the guy that they automatically default to now because of he's back. But I agree with you, and I agreed with North on this assessment that Chubb is. We think that Chubb could actually see a lot of good run in this game. So,
yeah, there's definitely some. I think that this game right now, I think for me is a game that I want to go pretty heavy on. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want to play. I want. This is words I never thought I'd say this season. I want to play Baker Mayfield. I want to play a lot of Baker Mayfield, and I want to stack him up 18 different ways with his team. I'll work Chubb in there. I'll work basically the whole offense there, and just stack it up. And I don't mind running it back with Devontae Parker. He's really the only guy I'm really that interested in on the other side. I've heard Gesicki and a couple of the running backs situation over there. I'm not that big on that whole situation. I think Cleveland defense is pretty good in general. I think that that you can run on them, especially with some of those guys out on their defensive line. So I might work in a few of those options there with the Miami running back situation. I guess what's the guy's name?
Laird.
Not Balaj, but yeah, I guess
Laird.
Laird. I have to look into him. I heard you guys talking about him on the other pod, but I want to look into him a bit more from a pass catching perspective. But I don't mind working him in as well. But mainly, I'm just going to be doing the onslaught Cleveland, situation here. I think Cleveland's been coming on real strong lately. Baker's been getting progressively better. I think Odell Beckham's in just like like he's just due for a blow up spot. Landry's a good volume kind of guy. Like there's just a lot of options here, and it's Miami, so like it's it seems like a smash spot, and I don't know that I want to try to convince myself of like, hey, they may just lean on the run, and that may mean that Baker doesn't score as well, or that Odell Beckham doesn't go up because you can run on Miami, a bunch. And like that seems like convincing myself to get off of a really good situation for a team, and I don't really necessarily need to do that.
Right.
So I think I'm just going to run this a bunch of different ways, and then in some of the lineups where I don't have it, I'll run with Chubb and stuff like that. So if I'm going to play, some of these other team stacks like Atlanta, Tampa Bay, or Seattle, or whatever, then I'll mix in the more of the running game on the Cleveland side. So, but as far as pass catching goes, I'm just going to stack this up, and you can get it. You can get it pretty cheap. Like Baker Mayfield is pretty reasonably priced for the matchup, and
106.
Yeah, I mean it's a he's a good pay down option. Like I mean I'm kind of considering him sort of like a pay down, almost cash play for me, really. For the kind of price that he's at. I think I might like Driscoll even a little bit more for but anyways, yeah, I mean as far as unique kind of combinations here, I think from a ownership perspective, I think Chubb is really going to be under owned for the situation, just due to the amount of people talking about Murray and sorry, not Murray, but what's his face? Hunt, Kareem Hunt, and that situation. But yeah, and then on the other side, I know you guys talked about Fitzpatrick or Fitzmagic, and and Devontae, and then the whole running back situation there. I don't mind it. Probably won't play a whole lot. I might have one lineup just to because I'm a Miami fan, just to have something to root for if it does happen. But yeah, I mean, like we've seen Fitzmagic, do his thing, throw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and stuff like that. Like he likes to chunk that ball deep sometimes, and yeah, it can happen. And Cleveland's got decent corner coverage, so it's not a great matchup for them, but I don't mind it. Like if you're going to run, like a game stack here, I don't think it's too bad.
Yeah.
This game.
Washington Detroit game. The Detroit side of the ball is the best side of the ball in this game. I even like their defense in this game. Haskins is a rookie. I saw something.
He actually didn't look bad last week, to be honest.
No.
I actually played a few lineups with Haskins McLaurin stacks last week, and I actually don't mind it again this week. Detroit's been not that great defensively. Really, recently they've just deteriorated a lot defensively, just all the way around the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have Darius Slay. I still have some pretty good respect for him, and he'll probably be covering McLaurin in this game. But dude is so talented. I'll still play him. I mean, he's pretty expensive, but like, I think he's still like probably the only guy I really want to talk about here on that side. I mean, everybody else is talking about Juice and or Geis, or however you pronounce it, but I call him Juice. And that whole situation. But like, man, we're talking about a potential three-headed monster there with AP, and Chris Thompson could also be back. So I don't know. Like, if the only situation I want to even consider, guys, is if both Thompson and Adrian are out. That would be the only consideration that I'd have in that.
Yeah. Pass catching for Detroit is where it's at in this game. I like that side. I saw something.
Yeah, I mean, Galladay's a stud, and you might as well, if you're going to be playing some of the pass catchers, go ahead and fire up Driscoll again. I think they brought his price up after last week, but he runs a lot. He got 50 yards or something like that last game. So he looked good. That's 2 good weeks basically back to back that he's played.
He's
from
not
a
afraid
fantasy
to run.
perspective.
He's not afraid to take off and run. There is one thing I did see from Haskins this week. He did call out his offensive line in this past week's performance and saying, what the hell, man? Why can't you guys put up some more pass protection on me so I'm not getting my ass slammed in the freaking ground every other play? And so
I'll have to go look that up. That doesn't sound too good.
So with that, I'm, of course, he's a Buckeye, so I get to hear more about it. But I maybe that's going to light a fire under this offensive line to protect him a little bit more, so that he can get the ball to McLaurin, because McLaurin actually spiked the ball in that game and kind of looked at it like, thank you for getting me the freaking ball, man. I am, probably the best wide receiver on this team. And so, there's that dynamic there that,
well, we'll see how it plays out, because it could also go the opposite way where they're pissed off and, who knows? So, I mean, I don't want to have a ton of ownership there, but if I'm going to run a couple game stacks in it, then like McLaurin's the guy, obviously, to bring it back with.
Mm-hmm.
But Detroit side obviously stacked that up, I think. And here's my, I'm going to stay on brand here and say, I'm going to watch my language here, because the kids are probably not too far away, but fuck. Detroit running backs. So Bo Scarborough and whoever else they got over there, I have no interest in that whole fiasco. So I'll let you guys play them if you want, but same thing with Tampa Bay, guys. I don't play running backs from either one of these games. So
running backs is
cool. Let's move on.
Points too, so you don't have to make those crazy calls there. So just be smart with your calls on running backs. Use the variance on your wide receivers. Let that be.
I want guaranteed touches, man. When I play my running backs, I'm going to pay up. I want to pay up for those guys. Those are guys I want to pay up for, and I want to get guaranteed points out of them. I want those points, right? I got to base my whole lineup on getting those points guaranteed.
Well, that's why McCaffrey was such a good play last week. It was like, he was 10-5, but he was guaranteed to
still a good play. Touches. Even in a bad matchup, right? Which is what he has this week. He's still a good play, just due to the amount of volume he gets. I mean, when a guy gets 30 points and doesn't get a touchdown, fantasy wise, that's retarded. It's if that's his floor, Jesus, man.
Yeah, and he's not. He's going to be owned, but he's not going to be as high owned as you think he's going to be, because he's 10-5. People are going to want to play that.
It's a hard week to play him, to be honest, just because there's not an obvious pay down value play this week.
Absolutely.
The defenses are also more expensive. There's no 1,500 defense this week. So it's just a harder week to play him. So
Yeah, this week
at least we
on
don't. At least we
DraftKings.
don't have the 7,500 quarterback that we want to play.
Yeah, I mean, this week on DraftKings, um, and they've been kind of going this way for the last, I would say, maybe week or two, where they're started with their pricing, and they do it every year, and they start to do it in and around about this time, and so what happens is you start to see some really um, difficult builds that you're going to be going through. Like you want the high priced wide receivers like your Michael Thomas, your Julio's, but it's gonna to be able to get to Christian McCaffrey, you're not going to be able to have one of those guys in your lineup, and so that you gotta weigh one of those out, and that's where the lineup construction comes in, and
Yeah,
that's why your sharp players that know how to do lineup construction um, do so well on DraftKings because of that. It lends itself to the sharper players, whereas like FanDuel kind
I,
of
I'm
is
gonna
more
run.
lax on that.
Let me run something by you. I know we're running out of time here, but I think this week, every year there seems to be a week where there's sort of a um, kind of like flat um, lineup construction where you kind of just get all the guys that are in that 6K range and just stack your lineup with just kind of like mediocre kind of guys, but you get the right set in there.
Mhm.
I kind of want to put together a few of these lineups that are really just like none of the studs and just all of the like good plays that are in that range. They may be overpriced for the guys that are in that range. But construction wise, like the ownerships are going to be uber low, right? Because you got to go high low in generally when with some of this stuff this week. So you're going to be having a lot of guys in the 4K range, 4 to 5K range, and then a lot of guys in the 8 or 10K range, right? If you're going to play Christian McCaffrey,
Right.
um, and like those guys in that 6,500 range are just going to be completely unowned because of that construction style. Um, so sometimes it's interesting to just construct your lineup completely differently and avoid any of those high or low guys and just go straight across the board. Get Ertz in there,
Yep.
get like and from a construction perspective, it's going to be super unique because nobody's
Yep.
really going to have that kind of style. They're going to play Christian McCaffrey. They're going to play
For sure.
Barkley. They're gonna, like a bunch of those guys that are up at the top, or Zeke or whatever, So it's not going to look as pretty, with some of the spots, but it'll look better overall because you'll be like, wow, actually, all of those guys are guys that can put up 25 points, right?
Right.
And that's kind of how you have to do it sometimes to win the millie. Like I haven't won the millie, but you've gotten a lot closer than I have, at least by 5 spots. But
I would say to add on to that too is if when you're reconstructing your lineups and you're starting to see that your lineups have 2 wide receivers in it that are in the 3K range, you're
yeah,
doing something wrong. And the reason why I say that is that you're placing too much salary into probably 1 or 2, maybe even 3 positions. So you're probably placing a lot of your salary into your quarterback position, one of your running back positions, and one of your wide receiver positions, whereas you're not equally distributing it across the lineup. So
and just in general, like
salary
from a if
distribution.
you yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
I
gonna
would
say
just
in general, like if you look at those millionaire maker lineups, the ones that win, they never have multiple punt spots like that,
yep,
multiple low like basement play spots like that. Occasionally they have one that's
yep.
a min price guy, but even that, like more often than not, the lowest price guy is more close to 4,000 than he is to 3,000.
And honestly, it took me a long time to figure that out. Um, it took me a lot of losses in the Millie Maker to figure that out. And once you start to figure things out on your roster construction, my roster construction is not the same as Hunter's. It's not the same as Kevin's. It's not the same as Stats or Norris. But what we do that is a consistent thing is we try to seek out value in positions that we feel is there. We materialize our value throughout our lineups. So where I have as much experience with roster construction as we do, we can pinpoint errors in our builds probably more quickly than others can. And so, like, if I start to see my builds where I have two punt sub 4K guys in there in the wide receiver position, I know I'm doing something wrong, and then I have to tweak them.
All right, hey Burns, we're gonna do. I know we want to try to wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes, so let's do
we can
rapid fire.
Let's go to 11. We're good.
Okay. Well, even then, let's do a rapid fire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post up the next several games here, and just you tell me what your favorite kind of correlated stack, 2-player combination, or more combination is from that game, and we'll just bang these out. Okay. And if you guys that are listening want to hear more about individual players from these are good plays or not, go listen to the Wolfpack. They covered all this in the Wolfpack. So there's nothing really that we're not covering here. But okay, let's do Jets versus Oakland here. What's your favorite play here in this combo play that we think is going to be a little bit more unique?
So I did cover this on the Wolfpack, and I'm going to be probably having ownership in this stack per se. Is I really like the Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller stack this week. I think it's a unique. It's not too unique, but it is a unique stack. A lot of players out there like to just stack the quarterback with either their WR1 or their WR2 and say, okay, I'm done. But they don't dig deeper. On the other side of the ball, I like the Ryan Griffin stack with you could either go with like with the Waller and Jacobs, you could go back with Bell, or you could go to the defense. Oakland's coming across country, so they could actually come up against that lag in their sleeping patterns, though there's probably not much that goes on it. If I remember Stats talking about it earlier in the year, there's really not that much that goes with the sleep patterns there. But, it could you could get Carr on a bad game coming across country, and they could, intercept a pass or two of his, and it could happen. Yep. Fumble.
I think both of those calls are real good. I like them both. I like, even if you're going to do Griffin, I even don't mind going Griffin DT or Crowder or somebody like that on that side. And if you're considering on the Oakland side, the Waller Jacobs, also consider the Waller Oakland D situation. Obviously, the Jets do give up a ton to the opposing defense, so Sam Darnold's been a little bit better as of late, but like he's still, it's still a shitty team. So, but yeah, I like that. I like both of those calls. I actually don't even mind doing some Darnold DT stacks or anything like that as well. Like, I think that this game has some potential to be a decent scoring game as well. All right, moving on. Let's do Jacksonville and Tennessee.
The ownership that I'm going to have in this game, if I do stacks with Foles, it's going to be stacks of Foles and Shark or Foles and Westbrook. But I like both running backs in this game a lot. I like Derrick Henry, and I also like Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette's backup he's just a guy right now. So you're seeing Fournette with significant touches and significant target share in this offense. You could even do similar to the tight end. You could even pair Shark and Fournette in this game and be great. You'd have a great little stack there. On the other side of the ball with the wide receiving core, not really sure what's going on with Corey Davis right now. I need to look more into that.
Yeah, he should be coming. They're saying he's coming back this week, so we should see Corey Davis back, and also Delaney Walker should be back. So,
okay,
like they're going to be
tight end.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be. So Delaney Walker, he's going to run the routes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jonah's going to be the more kind of block, he'll go back to his normal role, and I think that that it opens up a lot more opportunities on the team with those two healthy, or at least back in the mix.
Yeah. If anything, it opens up targets to AJ Brown in this game. If with those guys back, it could move that target share over to him because Tannehill has been with him while these two were injured, or out, and so that connection there could actually increase more with these guys coming back. So that Delaney Walker, he's gonna attract some of that defense, as well as Corey Davis. I mean, it's just given it's going to happen. So how Jacksonville schemes for that, they could scheme towards that and then move all the targets to AJ Brown. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's some plays here, and they're not super expensive either. So you can get a pretty good mix if you wanted to stack these two teams up here. I think there's some opportunity, and both have good running backs. It's an interesting situation for this game because I like games where that we project both the running backs and the wide receiver, the pass catchers, to do well in the game, because it sort of indicates that it could be a higher scoring game than it's currently projected at. So if if that's the situation where everybody could do good, why aren't we talking more about stacking this game up? So something to consider. Definitely, I think Chris Conley's even in play at 4,300. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it's not Chris Conley. What's his name? First name?
Yeah, I think you got it right. I know Chris Conley.
I always forget. I think it's Chris. His name messed up. Anyways, the number 3 guy, basically, for the outside guy for the he's their deep target. Other deep target, I guess should say, I guess, other than DJ.
Yeah, it's Chris Conley.
Okay, so Chris. All right. Anyways, he's 4,300. He's pretty reasonable in that price range for kind of what he brings. He's sort of a boom or bust play, so you kind of know what you get there. But Foles likes to throw deep, so I think he makes him more in play in that mix. So,
yep.
Take it for what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to get, in this particular situation, I think you're going to get all of these potential like stacks and game combinations are going to be pretty low owned in general. Just these teams project as sort of good defenses, but haven't been playing like good defenses lately on both sides. So, and there's really no individual defensive guy to be scared of, right? Shutdown type of corners or stud players that we're really concerned about on either side.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on. Now, okay, we're finally at Dallas New England game. So I think we already covered this a bit. You kind of gave your take on the running back situation for New England. I kind of gave the notes on who's going to miss it. So Sanu's going to miss. Dorsett's a questionable. He still has to clear concussion protocol. If both of those guys don't play, I think N'Keal Harry and Myers are both squarely in play. I think you would also consider Ben Watson a bit more in those situations, just due to the fact that he's probably a lot more familiar to or reliable to Tom Brady than either of those two rookies are. And Tom Brady's kind of like, I don't know what the right word is. Elite is kind of like he likes his guys, right?
Mhm.
And he doesn't give a ton of volume to the new kids on the block. He throws them a couple passes here and there, but they don't get. It's not like the next guy up kind of gets all the volume, right? Like you just go to
Right.
Edelman 1,000 times. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I like your
definitely
call.
It definitely elevates Edelman and White and Watson and those kind of guys that have the history with Brady more than it brings those other two guys into like huge volume roles. So
Yeah, I like your call on
um,
Edelman, especially with the price drop of 700 from last week.
yeah, even regardless of the situation there, I think Edelman's clearly a guy that's in play this week as one of those pay up options at wide receiver. Out of all of the guys up at that top, I like him probably in my top three that I'm considering. A couple of the other guys in the Tampa Bay Atlanta game, but are up there, but they're all sort of in the same mix to me. Like I think
Yeah.
volume wise, he's gonna get like 12 targets in this game. So,
Yeah, he's a target
um,
monster.
and then on the other side, Dallas, Amari Cooper. So we should probably see that. He's going to probably get Gilmore. Gilmore's going to probably be covering him, who's been just shut down this year.
Yep.
Although I'm not quite sure that he's seen a quality guy like Amari Cooper from a matchup perspective. But Cooper's also, I think, a little bit injured. I'm not really sure what's going on with him, but he didn't get a
Yeah.
full snap volume last week. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'm probably not going to be playing any Cooper just due to his price, the matchup, the whole situation.
Yeah.
Um, but Gallup and Cobb are both in play. I think both of them. Gallup's been a stud. He's like,
Mhm.
like he's had some down games, but like the guy is super talented. And in a game where we think that Cooper might get shut down, he definitely makes him a lot more interesting, and Cobb as well. Cobb's been really good too.
Yeah.
Fits really well into that game.
It's all about the
I
narrative,
think,
in this game.
yeah. I mean, I think if you look at the matchup, Zeke has got the better matchup of anybody, just due to the fact that New England's run defense hasn't been nearly as good as their pass defense. So he's kind of the clear game, and he's priced down. I mean, he's as
Mhm.
cheap as Zeke's been all year. So um, he's definitely a guy that's in play even in a hard matchup here. I think he's, volume wise is going to get, still the same volume.
Yeah.
So like that, I like that situation as well. And, I think a pretty contrarian stack here is to really just go heavy Dallas stacked up and just play anti New England here. Um, you can run it back with some of those New England guys, but um, I don't think that's going to be a very heavily owned just due to the perceived matchup. I mean, it's a hard matchup, but like this is the best team that New England's faced all year. So like this is, if this is a situation to be upset, this would be the week that it gets done. So far. So
Yeah,
I don't really hate it.
outside of Baltimore, this is probably the game that,
Yeah, and it's a completely different team
yeah.
than Baltimore, right?
Yep.
It's not the same kind of offense. Baltimore runs a very different offense than Dallas. Now, if there's a guy that can games, game. You, so here's the thing with the Baltimore game, right? Like who the threats are in that game. There's three guys, right? And if they can't take away those three guys and make you beat you with the other team, like that's a
Yep.
lot easier than taking away five or six guys. Really, is who you have to take away from Dallas, right? You got Dak, you got Zeke, you got Cooper, you got Gallup, you got Witten, you got really there's six guys that you're going to have to, and they'll beat you with any one of those guys if you take away two or three or what are those other ones. Now New England's talented enough individually with their individual cornerbacks and stuff like that to take away multiple of those guys. But
Right.
I don't know don't know if any teams can take away all of them. Like it's going to be an interesting game to watch, and I kind of like am convincing myself to maybe go more and more heavy on this game stack just because I think it's going to be pretty low owned. It's it's one of those situations where like you got two really good teams, and New England's been frustrating to play all year just because you never know kind of the situation. But like, I mean, Edelman's been pretty golden, I think, most weeks playing him. So he's like the only safe play, I think, on that side. But, I don't, I think it's just, if they're playing any other team in the NFL, you're playing guys from these
Yeah.
teams, right? And the fact that they're playing each other, we all of a sudden don't want to play either of them. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. I'll have to think about it more, but it's really kind of piqued my interest now. All right. You want to talk about the obvious game, the Atlanta Tampa Bay, real quick?
Sure.
I don't know that there's any combinations on this team that are going to be not chalk, but I don't know. Hit me with it. Hit me with the not obvious play here.
The lowest play, lowest owned play in this game is probably going to be Russell Gage, of the three wide receivers on the Atlanta side of the ball. Calvin Ridley coming off of a boom game from last week, he's going to be more owned than probably
They have him priced up so high though. Like I mean, yes, he's going to be owned, especially in these stacks with this game. But I don't think he's going to be actually that high owned outside of game stacks here.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody wants to pay that much for him. I don't know. I don't want to pay that much for him. He's a boom or bust type player in general.
Sure
is. I don't like, outside of Atlanta or Matt Ryan specific stacks, or even just game stacks in general here. Like, I'm not probably too interested in Ridley.
Yeah,
I don't know. What's your thought there?
Yeah, I used him last week. I had probably 40% ownership in him last week. And it was the Bradbury effect last week for me. Bradbury took out Julio.
Yeah.
And so I shifted all my ownership. Before I knew Bradbury was out, I had my ownership switched. So I had 40% on Julio, because Bradbury at that point in time, we didn't know if he was out or not. So I was playing, well, I'm going to play that he is out. And so then Ryan will shift all that pass volume to Julio, and Julio's going to have a massive game. Then when we heard that Bradbury was going to play, I automatically shifted all of my ownership from Julio over to Calvin Ridley, and that paid dividends for me last week. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, that was a smash play. I mean, and you didn't probably have as much of the Gage situation there, which was a bust last week. But
yeah,
the
Julio might be the play this week. He might be the play in stacks.
So Julio's sort of been, I think he's injured. He's been seen limping at practice.
Oh, really?
On the sidelines. So we got to keep an eye on his status there, because if for some reason he doesn't play, he plays through injuries a lot, so it's hard to tell sometimes how healthy he is, and how much is going to affect him, because we've seen him do really well when he's come in injured before, and then we've seen him do not so great. So the matchup looks great.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it could be another situation where, like, if Julio's out there and at less than 100%, and they just decide to go more Ridley kind of focus, it could be another Ridley week, and which is kind of unfortunate, because you kind of want to come into that situation where he has, like we did last week, where he hasn't been producing, kind of deal, and then he blows up. Not after he just blew up, because now his price is way up and everybody wants to play him. But if for some reason Julio is out, I think the other guy's Hardy there that would fill in. It changes that dynamic considerably if Julio's out. So
it almost makes
we'll have to see how that.
It almost shifts all my ownership in the game over to the Tampa Bay side.
Yeah, I think that that's maybe a good call there. The other side of things is Atlanta's defense. You know, as far as how they've been playing the last couple of weeks, I think a lot of people are talking about that. I definitely think that they're in play here. They're one of the teams I was looking at to fill in for this week. I have New England defense, and I'm actually considering not playing them against Dallas. And I picked up Chicago instead. So, but Atlanta was my second choice due to the fact that Tampa Bay is so turnover prone.
Yeah.
The odd thing about it is that they can throw 4 interceptions and still Winston puts up 20 points. So it's like it doesn't seem to affect the fantasy value on the Tampa Bay side that they suck so bad. So you could, in theory, have Atlanta defense do really well and still have a Tampa Bay stack that does well, right? Like it's a situation where you can literally play the opposing defense against the quarterback. It doesn't. There's very rare situations where I'm willing to do that during most weeks, but I don't mind playing the Atlanta defense here against or with either one of these quarterbacks in game stacks because I think that they're squarely in play this week. And then the other thing about this game is the OJ Harauer dynamic. That he basically was benched last week after that first drop pass that he got. So, and I know that a lot of people have been talking about whether or not they're speculating that he could just come into this game as benched and they just go Brait all the way. And I kind of feel like that could happen as well. I'm not, you know, he hasn't been playing really well, and I think that the coach just might be done with him. So it's a very speculative type of situation. But I like Brait a lot, actually. Even if Howard ends up playing some, I don't think Brait's a bad play here as a kind of more pay down tight end option. He's probably my favorite pay down. That 330, I think he's like 3,300 or something like that. Like low threes play this week. When I started doing my first look this week, he was the tight end I found myself going to most often. And this was me. I was trying to put some lineups together because when Kevin was going to doing the King of the Beach stuff, I wanted to kind of do a first look, kind of just to see how I would start thinking about doing a King of the Beach lineup if I was there. I was trying to live vicariously through him, and I was like, but I remember when I went a couple of years ago, actually. Brait was one of the guys that was like one of the guys that went off like that week, and so I kind of just had this like connection, King of the Beach to Brait, and I was like, oh, this might be another Brait situation, and actually it was weird because the lineup that I didn't win with, I had done 2 different lineups, and I went with the Tom Brady stack instead of the Matt Ryan stack. And the one that I didn't go with would have won the 200K, and the one that I went with got me 38th place or something like that. So,
Almost wishes that you had that second entry in there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I needed, is that both entries, so I didn't have to like go back and forth over that. And I can't believe I picked the stupid Tom Brady lineup because I never played New England stacks like that. But anyways, where was I going with that? Oh, Brait. Yeah. So, I like Brait. I like Evans. The one thing that I'll mention here is that I've been kind of playing over the last few weeks, and it's been paying off pretty good, is the just mainly sticking with Evans. Everybody keeps saying Godwin, and he was stellar at the beginning of the year. And I think, yes, it can be a go back and forth type of situation. But ever since Winston came out publicly and said, we need to get Evans the ball in order to win games, ever since then, Evans is the guy. And so I kind of just have been slotting him in as the guy each week, and I'll keep doing that, I think, until it switches.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll probably mix in Godwin, but I'm going to be more on the Evans side of things than the Godwin side
For sure.
until that changes. Just because, whenever a quarterback says something like that, I kind of feel like it's stuck in their head as well. And it may affect their kind of play. And it's been weeks since that happened, so maybe it's like things are changing or whatever. But and I think a lot of it has to do with matchups
Yeah.
and players' ability to get open and stuff like that. But just a little food for thought there.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Carolina, New Orleans. We got 2 more games and then we're done. So Carolina, New Orleans. What's the interesting correlation stack here you want to do? Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's kind of the man.
Yeah.
But where are we looking?
So
I think we already actually covered this at the beginning of the pod, right? the
yes.
the double running back. Play 3 running backs, right, from this game.
You very well could. So on the Carolina side, I'll start there and then I'll go to the New Orleans side. So on the Carolina side, the two plays that I like a lot in this game are Greg Olsen and Christian McCaffrey. I'm not so much on the DJ Moore or Curtis Samuel in this game. So that for the Carolina side. On the New Orleans side, I'm in love with their with the running backs on this side. So I love Kamara and I love Latavius Murray in this game, and I will have lineups with both Murray and Kamara in it. I'm thinking back to when Ingram and Kamara were at their peak playing for the Saints together. And there were times when you had them in the lineup together and they just blew up, and they had it was 70 points scored, something like that, 80 points.
There was 2 games. There was 2 games when they were really peaking that during that year that they were in the top 5, both of them, for the week. Yep. So this seems like a good matchup. I like the call. I'm definitely going to put some lineups together with that combo. I also don't mind doing the New Orleans defense situation here with mixing in the running backs and or Jared Cook situation. I'm not really big on any of the pass catchers in this game.
No.
Michael Thomas is going to get Bradley coverage, who's not shut him down, but really limited him in their past matchups. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that as the goal. It's not too hard to get off a guy that's top priced, wide receiver in the slate. I think he's going to be probably pretty heavily owned, even at that. And then Ginn and Tyron Smith or whatever his name is, just haven't shown that they can produce all year. So, what's his name? It's not Traquan Smith. Anyway, so I mean, this is the Kamara show. I think you could make a case for Jared Cook, and then I love the Latavius Kamara combo call. And I mean, it's not generally good to stack both running backs on both sides of the ball, but this is a game where that's. I don't even think it's that bad to do a Christian McCaffrey, Kamara, and Latavius, and you can fit all those guys in and still have a decent amount of, depending on who you're playing at quarterback, you still have a decent amount for a good, mid-range set of wide receivers. So, cool. All right, Seattle, Philly is our last game, and I know this is one of your probably favorite games of the week, so go ahead.
All right. So this is probably my favorite game.
This was the other. Russell was the guy, right? A few weeks ago when you hit your other top 5 finish, or top 10 finish.
Yeah, this is my This is my game of the week for me, and I love it on both sides. And so I'll spend a good amount of time on this, talking to you guys about this. So, what do we know about Seattle when they play teams that shut down the run? It forces Russell Wilson to have to throw the ball a lot. Chris Carson is going to get shut down by Philadelphia in this game. They're a very good run defense. They're on the road. They're going to keep the ball in their one guy that they trust more than anybody else on this team, and that's Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson could be without Tyler Lockett this week. So if that's the case, I like DK Metcalf a lot in this game. They do have Josh Gordon in this game. He's a viable 4.2K on DraftKings. So he could be in play here. I have to look into the connection there. Yeah, I have to look at the connection between him and Russell from the last game they played together. But he is in play here. DK is definitely in play here. I also really like Jacob Hollister in this game a lot. Philadelphia against the tight end position is not as, they're kind of porous against the tight end position. So those three spots there are in play. On the other side of the ball,
it does look like Lockett will play though.
Okay.
Based off of the latest news and notes. So
if he does end up playing, let me just check one thing on Philly's coverage. So if he's going to play, what that could end up doing is it could
it's going to be
shift.
It's probably going to be Ronald Darby that covers him.
Okay.
And really ever since Philly's gotten Darby and Jalen Mills back, they've been a lot better pass coverage than they had earlier in the season. So, it's a little bit different situation there. So they have been a better defense in general, but I think that it's still potentially exploitable. But it doesn't, if those guys are covering the, if they move people around and they can get Lockett, open from the slot or whatever, I think that he's still going to potentially have that kind of upside potential. He's kind of hard to pay for though. I mean, he's super expensive. He's still like,
he's like the second highest. He's the second highest,
third highest
wide receiver, right?
Third highest, yeah. I mean, just below Julio and Thomas. So, Thomas is ridiculous, 9,300 this week. So it's really hard to pay for him. But Julio Jones is 8,000. Tyler Lockett at 7,600.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to pay more for Tyler Lockett than you are going to for Evans or Godwin or Beckham or Edelman. Like those guys are all I think potentially better spots than Lockett. Lockett's getting a lot of volume, but really we've only seen a couple blow up spots this year from him. Like,
right.
It has been in the situations where they've shut down the run though. So I will give you that when they are in these types of situations, that's when Lockett does seem to kind of exceed those expectations, right? And he's a super talented guy that can get it open, but I like the DK Metcalf. I like Josh Gordon situation there. I mean, really, those are the only guys in play in this situation. So, wait, where's my notes here? Because
in this game, I absolutely love stacking that up and then running it back with Ertz or Goddard in this game. Because
I like that call. The tight end is definitely where I want to attack on the Philly side. I like both of those guys. Ertz is probably one of my favorite tight end plays at the in that higher range. He's pretty cheap actually for just because he hasn't been playing that like he has been in the past, but I love the situation for him. I think it's a great play. I like him a lot more if Alshon Jeffrey doesn't play. We'll see if Jeffrey plays. If Jeffrey plays, I think he's squarely in play as well.
Yep. If Jeffrey's out,
but
this,
yeah, with the injuries that they have, it seems like it could be a smash spot for Ertz and Goddard, really.
Another
the
one
other
that if
factor here is it doesn't look like that Jordan Howard may play. He hasn't been cleared for play yet, so he's coming also off of a concussion. So he'll have to get cleared for contact before the end of the week. But if he doesn't play, we should see more Miles Sanders, and Jay Hajahi will probably get worked into that mix. But I think we're still expecting Miles Sanders to be the kind of go-to guy. And we should see Ajayi start to get worked into that mix. So it should take away a bit from the Sanders side of things. But I don't mind him too much here. I think that there's some other probably plays in that salary range that I like a bit better. But I was willing to play him last week. And I don't think that this week's that much different.
Yeah. I also think if Alshon Jeffrey is out, you could see Jordan Matthews in play in this game. Jordan Matthews has been on the winning Millie Maker lineup in the past, so he could make it there again. He's at 3.5K this week. He's a viable sub 4K play if Alshon Jeffrey's out. That's only if Alshon Jeffrey's out, because I believe that Aguilar is actually out this week too. So that's going to force more play to Ertz, more than we would think. And the Miles Sanders play with Jordan Howard out, I'll have more increased in ownership in Sanders this week, because if Howard can't pass that protocol, you could take stance on this game and play the Philly defense with Seattle on the road, and maybe catch them in a off game. It can be done. You could pair up Miles Sanders or Ertz with Philly defense in this game.
Yeah. So here's the thing though to consider here is that so Aguilar is questionable, yes, but I don't think we'll get confirmation until tomorrow on that, on whether he'll play or not. So there's a few different situations if you're going to play this game that you need to be kind of ready to switch to based off of the news. So if Alshon and Aguilar don't play, that's the only situation I think that you can probably play Jordan Matthews in. If Alshon plays and Aguilar doesn't, I don't think I want any Jordan Matthews at all in that situation. Right. I want Goddard, because they're going to play Goddard out of the slot. They'll run 2 tight end sets, and they won't, and they're just not going to. They'll just run it that way. They're not, they're already used to playing a lot of 2 tight end sets anyway. So I don't think that's a huge change for them to just swap out Aguilar for Goddard.
Right.
And then if Aguilar plays and Alshon doesn't, I think it's probably going to be maybe a bit more Jordan Matthews there, but like Goddard will still, I think, work in more 2 tight end sets, and they'll just slide Aguilar out as well. So like I said, I think it's really just that situation where both of those guys are out that you want to consider maybe playing Jordan Matthews. But just kind of have that in your mind if you're going to, be considering kind of different options there. Cool. I think that was it for the games. Is there any other kind of like news or notes or kind of things that you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
I just say when you're creating your lineups this week, and you start to see your lineups like we talked about earlier, and you start to see your lineups with 2 or more sub 4K wide receivers, you probably need to start sharpening your pencil a little bit more on your build, and start to redo your build a little bit more, because something is off there. You shouldn't have two sub 4K wide receivers in your lineup. Uh, um, might be trying to Kamara and CMC in your lineup, so that might force that to happen, but it's not um, it's not optimal to do that. Okay, so keep that adage in your mind when you're crafting your lineups this week, and you
All
know,
right, cool. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's really valuable for these types of like GPP or going for the millie or going for like these wins. Something to keep in mind because it is something that I think we all find ourselves doing, trying to jam in these big high price guys and then like just running out of cash and be like, oh, I don't mind. I'll put in all these like schlub types of deals, and that we've been talking about on the pod. But like these guys are just individual, like the one pay down spot that you want. You don't want to be loading up on it because like the problem is that like the chance of them getting like if they get a 15 points, they smash, right? Like, but and you can get away with a 15-point guy in a winning lineup, but you can't get away with two of them.
no.
So
If you
so just
want,
keep that in mind. Yeah.
yeah, members, if you want, go back. You can look in the winning lineups in Slack, and my eighth place Millie Maker lineup is still there. Take a look at it. You'll notice what you're going to notice in that is that I have Christian McCaffrey, Jacobs, um, as well as Miles Sanders in that lineup. And Miles Sanders, actually, I think he only scored like 6 points, 6.5, maybe 6.9 points, somewhere in that range. So he was my lowest point player in that lineup. And I still got in the top 10 in the Millie Maker with a guy that scored below 10 points. It was a low scoring week. It may not
Exactly
be
right.
that same.
But had you had like if you had Cohen or somebody that got you 18, 19, 20 points, that's a $1 million lineup, right? So
Yes.
you can see the difference there is that it's like that's the construction that you need, and it's still hard to get like the right mix in those situations. But if you stick to some of those quality like locked in core plays, you're definitely going to be have a lot more opportunities to get that right combination, rather than mixing up a bunch of guys at the bottom end of those spectrums, right? Ashley's got a
Absolutely.
question. Do you like Randall Cobb? Yeah, we covered Cobb earlier, but definitely like Cobb. And I think we like we talked about this a little bit, but the Dallas side was kind of one of the calls we were talking about here is like it's definitely going to be a more contrarian play to play the pass catching options for Dallas. So if you want to play it that way, I think that it definitely is going to give you a bit of an edge in some of those GPPs. So you're taking some good players against a hard defense, and playing against sort of that mentality of like this is going to be a low scoring kind of situation. So I like the call. I'm going to be running some Dallas lineups with that and taking a shot there. But it's definitely a more contrarian play this week.
Yeah, one more thing
And
before
then,
we roll
so,
off. The
yep.
Shark Autopsy report has been posted to the site, and it's in Slack. You can access the article from Slack if you want to. It's pretty much in every NFL Slack chat room, and so you can access it there. Um, what I've been doing with the Shark Autopsy report is going more into methodology of lineup construction versus that of the actual players utilized. So to give you as members more of an understanding of how to um, perform lineup construction and the types of methodologies utilized by guys that are getting into the top 10. What I've been able to find is that certain construction works in this type of a contest versus other construction. And a lot of people say you have to have the right mindset for it. You do. It's tough. It's a tough contest to do really well in.
Yeah.
But no, I am not a mass. I do not mass enter this contest.
But you've been doing really good. I mean, so far this year, you got 2 top 10 finishes in
Yes.
the Millie Maker. So, I mean, something's working there. So definitely, guys, if you haven't read it, take a look at it. Burns knows what he's talking about. If you want a guy that knows how to put together a good construction of lineups that are going to, give you a best shot at placing in these crazy hard to place in tournaments, he's definitely one of the best here to talk to Ping about him and read about all of this stuff. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's week 12. You guys go get them, and we'll definitely be chatting. Just if you don't know, Kevin the Geek is out in Miami at the King of the Beach. So hopefully he's going to bring home the big win and represent the Army out there. So try not to ping him too much, I think, on Slack this week if you can avoid it, because he's probably going to be a bit
I think on Sunday
like underwater with trying to like consider what plays he wants to do with his lineup. So
I would say
it's stressful as heck, man.
Sunday he's going to be shut down. I wouldn't even ping him on Sunday. I think he's just going to be completely shut down with this this contest that he's in, and he stressed it on the Vegas lines that this is the one lineup that he is focusing on more than anything else this week. So I would definitely, if you do DM him, know that you may not hear back from him on Sunday.
Yeah. But wish him all the best, and I think he's going to just crush it out there. It's an interesting week, so I think it's going to make that particular tournament really an interesting one to play, because I have a feeling that there's going to be a ton of ownership on one particular game, and it's really going to come down to where you can differentiate yourself from the field. So interested to see kind of what he ends up going with. Burns, before we leave, what's your favorite quarterback paydown option this week that you feel like is like this most solid for a viable GPP play?
What's the salary range below 6?
So just the lowest priced quarterback you're going to go this week in your GPPs that you feel reasonably. I'm not talking about the guy that you're going to take in one lineup.
Okay.
The guy that you're going to take in, let's say 10 to 15% of your lineups if you're mass entering, or if you're doing 20 lineups, then one of your 3, or whatever,
Okay.
well, who's the low price guy? Is it Matt Ryan? Is it
right?
I mean, I think
I do. It's kind of funny that even though I do about between 20 and 30 lineups in the Millie Maker, I do use one of them as a handcrafted lineup, and it's an off the radar quarterback play, and this one is not heavily off the radar, but it is probably the lowest I'm going to go in terms of salary. And it's going to probably be Fitzpatrick this week is my lowest salaried quarterback.
Wow.
Yeah. But the one quarterback that I've been throwing back and forth in my head that who I want to play, and it's off the radar probably more than any other quarterback that you'll hear about all week, and is Carson Wentz. I do love that game a lot, and so
how many lineups you think you'll run with him?
I'm gonna have probably it's either gonna be that's kind of where I'm tossing around. How much do I want in them? It's either going to be 2 to 4 lineups with him. So you're looking at almost 20% ownership in him. So, but he's going to be low owned. He's going to be sub 5% for sure.
Oh yeah. He'll be super low owned. For me, it's probably going to be Jeff Driscoll. I think I'll probably have a decent share of him this week due to, I mean, he's priced up from where he was last week, but at 5,500, I still think he's probably about the lowest I'm going to go from a decent amount of lineups there, because I just like the game. I like the Detroit-Washington game. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think that that's probably where I'm going to go with most of my low-priced ownership, and then I'll probably be up a little bit above that. I like the Baker Mayfield lineups and the Dak Prescott lineups. I may decide to work in a few more of those than I was originally planning. And I'll probably have some of the Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan, but at their price range, they're just harder to work in this week, in particular. So, but that's it, man. Cool. Well, thanks for the time, everybody.
Yeah, another good one.
And yeah, you guys go crush it out there, and peace.
Bye, guys.